The bells rang slow and deep. The world turned its eyes to the balcony. The sky above St. Peter's Square was cloudy, but inside the crowd, there was light. A man stepped forward. Not young. Not famous. A quiet face, round glasses, calm eyes. He raised his hand. "Peace be with you," he said. And in that moment, the world met Pope Leo the 14th. But before that moment, he was just Robert. A boy with a soft voice, walking through the streets of Chicago, holding a book too big for his hands. Robert Francis Prevost was born on September 14, 1955. He was the son of immigrants. His father worked with machines. His mother, with kindness. They didn't have much, but they had each other, and they had faith. Every Sunday, Robert sat beside his parents in a wooden pew, watching the light move through stained glass. He didn't always understand the words, but he felt something. A pull. A peace. A question. At school, Robert was quiet. Teachers said he listened more than he spoke. But when he spoke, people listened. His voice was steady, like he already knew silence. He liked science. He liked music. But most of all, he liked stories. Especially the ones in old books with gold-edged pages. Stories about saints. About choices. About hope that did not shout, but whispered. One day, when he was a teenager, Robert entered a church after school. No one was there. Just him, and a single candle. He sat down. He closed his eyes. And he asked a question he could not explain. "What do you want from me?" Years passed. He went to college. He studied hard. He learned about the world. He read about justice, power, history. But something else called him. Not from a classroom. From deeper. He wanted more than knowledge. He wanted purpose. When he was 21, Robert joined a religious order. Not for power. Not for praise. But because he believed that life could be more than work and worry. He believed in helping others. In living simply. In serving quietly. He became a priest. He took vows. Poverty. Obedience. Chastity. Not because they were easy, but because they pointed him toward truth. He wore simple robes. He woke early. He prayed often. He listened more than he spoke. Then, he left the country. He traveled far from the cold streets of Chicago to the heat of northern Peru. The journey was long. The plane was small. When he arrived, the roads were dirt. The people were poor. But their hearts were strong. He stayed there. Not for a week. Not for a month. For decades. He lived among the people. Ate with them. Prayed with them. Learned their language. He saw hunger. He saw injustice. But he also saw love. Families who shared one plate. Children who smiled with nothing. Faith that did not come from books, but from life. He became their priest. Then, their friend. Then, their leader. But not everyone liked him. He spoke out against injustice. He protected the weak. He challenged corruption. And some men in power did not forget it. One night, they came to his door. Angry voices. Hard fists. But Robert did not run. He opened the door. Calm. Steady. And he said, "If you need to hurt someone, start with me." They left. After that, people listened to him more. Not because he was loud. But because he was brave. He returned to the United States later. But part of his heart stayed in Peru. He became a teacher. A leader in his religious order. He traveled. He worked with young priests. He guided. He never wanted titles. But titles came. First bishop. Then archbishop. Then a powerful role in Rome. But inside, he was still Robert. The boy with the book. The young man with the question. The priest with the candle. He had never dreamed of being pope. Others wanted it. Fought for it. Not him. He only wanted to serve. And maybe that was why he was chosen. He didn't sleep the night before the vote. The walls of the Vatican were silent, but inside his heart, a storm moved slowly. Robert sat in his room, holding an old cross. It was not gold. Not polished. Just wood. The kind you can hold with both hands. The kind that fits quietly into prayer. Outside, the world waited. Cardinals spoke in circles. Names moved like whispers through the halls. Some names were powerful. Some familiar. His name was quiet, but it did not go away. Again and again, it returned. Like a candle that refused to go out. In the morning, he walked into the Sistine Chapel. He looked up. The ceiling was filled with light and color, but his eyes stayed low. He sat down. He folded his hands. He closed his eyes and whispered, "I am not enough." But the votes came. And they pointed to him. He did not smile. He did not cry. He simply stood. They asked him the question every pope is asked, "Do you accept?" He paused. Not to think, but to listen. Then he said, "I do. But only with God's help." A few hours later, the world saw him. Dressed in white. Standing alone on the balcony. A gentle smile. A name on his lips, Leo. "I choose the name Leo," he said, "not because I am strong, but because I must be brave." The square below him burst into applause. But he did not raise his arms. He only bowed his head. The next morning, the real work began. They gave him keys. They gave him staff. They gave him papers to sign, names to remember, walls to walk. But what he wanted most was time. Time to listen. Time to pray. Time to ask again and again, what does the church need now? He read letters from every part of the world. A family in Africa asking for peace. A child in France asking if God still hears her. A priest in Asia begging for safety. He read each one. Slowly. Like they were prayers. He invited people no one expected. Nurses. Refugees. Former prisoners. Mothers. Students. He sat with them. He did not speak first. He listened. He took notes with a pen, not a screen. He looked them in the eyes and asked, "How can the church help you?" One man cried. A mother smiled. A young boy told him, "You look like my grandfather." Robert laughed. "I'll take that as a compliment." But not everyone was smiling. Some leaders said he was too soft. Too quiet. Too humble. Others worried. He doesn't play politics. He doesn't protect the powerful. He might change everything. Robert heard these things. He nodded. He said nothing. He walked the gardens at night, alone, whispering to the stars. He remembered Peru. He remembered Chicago. He remembered being the priest who had nothing but faith. One day, he stood in front of a wall of portraits. Popes before him. Some ruled like kings. Some like warriors. Some like saints. He looked at them all. Then he looked down at his own shoes. Old, brown, simple. "I don't belong here," he said softly. "But maybe that's why I'm here." He began to make changes. He sold some gold. Gave the money to children's hospitals. He closed and used rooms in the Vatican. Turned them into shelters. He asked his guards to eat with the homeless once a week. Not to protect. To serve. He spoke to the world, but not in long speeches. He used simple words. Clear words. Words that said, "We are here to love. Not to rule." He wrote letters to countries at war. Not as a ruler. As a brother. He visited churches that had been burned. He kissed the hands of widows. He washed the feet of refugees. Reporters asked, "Are you trying to change the world?" He answered, "No. Just trying to love it." But loving the world is hard. And some people didn't want love. They wanted control. One group tried to stop him. Quietly. Letters. Leaks. Lies. They said he was dangerous. Too soft. Not strong enough. He said nothing. Instead, he kept walking. Each step, closer to the people. Closer to God. And farther from fear. The rain fell hard that night. Rome was quiet, but inside the Vatican, candles still burned. Robert sat by a window. He didn't wear the papal robe. Just a simple shirt and a sweater from Peru. He held a small letter in his hand. It was from a prisoner in Brazil. The man had been in jail for 20 years. He wrote, "I made mistakes, but I still believe in light. Thank you for reminding me. Robert read the letter twice. Then folded it carefully. He placed it inside a book of Psalms. The words stayed with him. Not because they were grand, but because they were honest. That night, he prayed with his eyes open. He didn't ask for power. He didn't ask for victory. He only said, "Let me be useful." The next morning, he flew to a refugee camp. No media. No speeches. Just a visit. He walked through the tents, holding hands, giving hugs. One woman gave him a piece of bread. He took it like it was treasure. He sat beside a boy with a missing arm. They didn't speak the same language, but they smiled the same smile. When he returned to Rome, people asked why he went. He said, because no one else was going. He kept his life simple. He lived in a small apartment, not the grand papal suite. He ate at the staff cafeteria. He carried his own bag. Once, someone asked, "Where is your security?" He smiled. "I'm not here to be protected. I'm here to be open." But being open came with risk. One evening, someone sent him a message. It was not kind. It warned him to stop talking about poverty, about forgiveness, about change. It told him to remember who holds real power. He read it slowly. Then, he put it in a drawer. Not out of fear. Out of sadness. "They still don't understand," he said. "Power is not control. It's courage." He continued his work. Slowly. Patiently. Like planting seeds. He opened schools in forgotten places. He sent doctors to villages without names. He asked every church in the world to keep their doors open at night. Just in case someone needed shelter. Just in case someone was cold. He wrote letters to young people. Hundreds. Maybe thousands. He told them they were not too young to change the world. He told them their anger mattered. That their dreams were not too small. One letter said, "Dear Holy Father, I don't believe in anything. What should I do?" He wrote back, "Then start with love. It doesn't need belief. It needs only action." He visited countries in conflict. He never arrived with police or gold. Only with shoes worn from walking. He met with leaders. Some smiled. Some didn't. One president asked, "What do you want?" Robert said, "I want your people to sleep without fear." Another leader asked, "What do you offer?" He answered, "Nothing but truth." But truth makes enemies. Not all cardinals agreed with him. Some said he was too gentle. Some said he was ruining tradition. He invited them to speak. He didn't defend himself. He only asked them one question: when did we stop listening? Some stayed angry. Some left the room. But one or two looked at the floor. And stayed silent. He spent his evenings alone. Walking. Reading. Writing. Sometimes he cried. Sometimes he laughed at small things, birds on a windowsill, a child's drawing sent from Canada. He kept a notebook. Inside, no plans. Just reflections. One page said, "The world is heavy. But love is heavier. And still, it lifts." Another, "I am not a light. Only a mirror." He never said he was perfect. He never wanted statues. He told every person who praised him, "Please, pray for me instead." One afternoon, a group of children came to visit. They were from a school in a poor village. They stood in front of him, shy, holding flowers. He kneeled to meet their eyes. "Do you know who I am?" he asked. One boy said, "You're the man from the news." Robert smiled. "That's true. But more than that, I'm your friend." Then he told them a story about a boy who had nothing, but dared to dream. A boy who one day whispered, "God, do you see me?" The room went quiet. Then, one girl said softly, "He sounds like you." He nodded. Yes. He was. The sun was setting behind the dome of St. Peter's. The sky burned gold and soft orange. Robert stood at the edge of the Vatican garden, his hands behind his back. His steps were slower now. His breath, deeper. But his mind was sharp, and his heart, still full of fire. He had served as pope for years. Some called him a reformer. Some called him a threat. Some called him a saint. But when people asked him how he wanted to be remembered, he always said the same thing. As someone who tried. He never stopped trying. He tried to speak with honesty, even when it hurt. He tried to love with depth, even when it was hard. He tried to listen. To grow. To walk forward without forgetting the past. One morning, after prayer, he opened a letter from his brother John. It was simple. Just a few lines. It said, "You're still the same. The boy from Chicago. Our brother. Our Bob. Don't forget that." He smiled. Then cried. Not with sorrow. With gratitude. He remembered the small church of his childhood. The pews. The candles. The way his mother folded her hands. The way his father said amen. He remembered the old woman in Peru, who taught him how to cook rice and keep faith alive. He remembered the angry man at the gate, who screamed and then hugged him. He remembered the girl who said, "You sound like that boy in your story." He never forgot any of them. Because they were the reason. Not the title. Not the ring. Not the balcony. But the people. That was why he had said yes. That was why he stood every day, even when his legs ached. That was why he kept writing, even when his hands shook. That was why he still knelt at night, even when it hurt to rise again. The world had changed around him. But he still walked slowly. Still breathed the name of Jesus like it was the first word he ever learned. Still touched the feet of strangers as if they were holy ground. Sometimes, at night, he would return to the chapel alone. No guards. No assistants. Just him and the candlelight. One night, a young priest found him there, sitting on the floor. "Holy Father, are you all right?" Robert looked up and smiled. "Yes. Just remembering how it began." The priest sat beside him. "Do you ever get tired?" Robert looked at him carefully. "Yes. But it's a good tired. The kind that means you gave everything." He placed a hand on the priest's shoulder. "And when it's your turn to carry the light, don't worry about the weight. Worry only if it stops burning." He stood slowly. And left the room in silence. He began to speak less. Let others speak more. He trained young leaders. Gave them courage. Gave them truth. And then stepped back. His final Easter as Pope, he stood before a sea of people. His voice was softer than before. But every word reached the heart. "We are not here to shine," he said. "We are here to reflect. The world doesn't need stars. It needs lanterns. Quiet ones. Steady ones. Burning in the dark." He ended with one sentence. "Love is the only power that does not fade." And then he turned. And walked back into the stillness. The day he stepped down was cloudy, but peaceful. The bells rang. The crowd wept. He stood at the same balcony where he had once begun. He looked out at the faces. "Thank you," he said. "For letting me serve you." Then he made the sign of the cross. Bowed his head. And disappeared behind the curtain. He returned to a simple home. No throne. No guards. Just a bed, a garden, and a notebook. He still wrote every day. Still prayed. Still met visitors. Quietly. Kindly. One afternoon, a boy came to see him. Nervous. Holding a letter. The boy sat down and said, "I want to be like you." Robert laughed gently. "No," he said. "Be like you. That's more than enough." The boy asked, "Do you miss being Pope?" Robert looked out the window. "No," he said. "Because I still belong to God. That never changed." He lived a little longer. He laughed often. He forgave easily. And one morning, just before sunrise, he took one last breath. The news spread fast. The world cried. But many people smiled too. Because they had known him. Not just as a pope. But as a man. A brother. A servant. And somewhere, far from Rome, in a small church with wooden pews, a child looked up at the candlelight and whispered, "Do you see me?" And in that moment, the fire moved forward. Not in robes. But in hearts. Still burning. Still walking. Still answering, "Yes. I see you." Thank you for listening to this story. If you liked it, write about it in the comments and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new stories.